Hi, this is Mark Blaauw-Hara, the Writing Program Coordinator for North Central Michigan College. I'm going to give you a quick little APA format video. My goal in this video is to provide the basics of APA formatting. If you would like to get into more depth, you're going to have to consult a handbook, talk with your professor, or go out to one of the many great sites on the internet to find out more. The first thing I want to tell you is don't wing it with APA format. Every single thing is there for a reason. It's to increase the clarity of your paper so that your ideas get across. Following APA format exactly shows that you care about your paper and that you're a professional. It's going to predispose your professor to think positively about you and to take you seriously. And that's most likely going to result in a better grade for you. So, let's get into it. First off, I want to point out the top of this first page in an APA paper. You'll notice that I've circled this area that says running head : sample APA document, and you should probably see that sample APA document looks pretty familiar because it's part of our title. What you want to do with an APA paper is you'll have a header on each page, and that header is slightly different on the first page. The first page has these words right here, running head. Every page is going to have the rest of this sample APA document, which is part of your title. That's so that in case your paper becomes unstapled while your professor is taking it to his or her house to grade, that it's easy to put it back into order and to tell what pages come from what paper. You'll also notice that there is a page number on each and every page. That page number is up in the upper right hand corner. The header is up in the upper left hand corner. Then approximately in the middle of the paper you're going to have this stuff right here, which is your title for your paper. I made a fancy one that has a first thing and then a colon and then a second part to the title. A lot of academic papers have that, but I'm sure it's not required for you. Then you have your name and your school. That's all that you're going to need to have on that first page of the paper. So let's turn to the second page. Alright. The next thing that you get to have on this second page is, again, as I mentioned earlier, a slightly different header. You just don't have the words running head on it. You will have what's called an abstract on this second page of your paper. Centered, and at the very top you'll have the word abstract, and then you'll have the abstract itself. An abstract is basically a very short summary of the paper. It's around 150 to 200 words. When possible, you want to lift the language from the paper, so you just take sentences that you've already said in your paper and you cut them down or adapt them so that they're grammatical and put them in the abstract. Again, the abstract is a summary of what you're going to say in the paper. There is no indent over here. You don't indent that paragraph. It's just a block right there. So, on to the third page. Third page of the paper. This is where the paper actually begins. Notice that we have that same header, that same page number, etc., just like we did on the second page. On the third page, you repeat your title. That's at the very top of the page. It's centered. It's not bold. It's not underlined. It's not 16-point font or anything like that. APA is very boring. And in general, you make the most boring choice, you're going to have the right choice. So, it's 12-point font, a very traditional type of font such as Times New Roman, and nothing is bolded or underlined or anything like that. Okay, so sample APA document, a wonderful resource for students. And then we have part of an essay that I wrote recently that I just have included here to show you some other characteristic techniques that you're going to use in APA. So a lot of your papers are going to require different sections. And when you have different sections to your paper, you need to have headings. APA says headings should be bolded and centered. If you're going to use subheadings, you're going to need to look it up because there's a slightly different format for that. But these major headings are bolded and centered. Everything is double spaced within the paper. You indent your paragraphs. This is not APA, but I recommend that you do what I'm doing right here, which is you tell your reader exactly what you're going to talk about within your paper. That is a very, very common technique in academic writing, is at the first part there in your introduction, you tell your reader what the paper's about, what you're going to talk about, and you lay that out in the order that you're going to discuss it in the actual paper itself. Next, you see that we have another header. What is curriculum? Blah, 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 a bunch of really boring stuff. And then I cite a source, and I want to show you how to do that. First off, this is called a variety of in-text citation that's called an attributive tag, okay, which just means that you're attributing information to somebody. You'll notice that APA requires that you have the last name and the date. Incidentally, this particular source has two authors, and those two authors have the same last name. So there's their last names, and then you have the date that it's actually published, which is 2008. That date appears in parentheses. Blah, 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 blah. You have a paraphrase of the information that they have, and then I decided to do a little quotation, which is right here. When you do a quotation, as you might imagine, you have quotation marks, but then you also have the page number that you drew the quotation from with that little P and a period. Notice that there is a space after the quotation mark, a parenthesis, that little P. If you have more than one page, then you do PP, period, space, the page number, another parenthesis, and then a period. Okay? We don't have anything funky like two ends of the sentences, two periods, anything like that. It actually does make sense. So that's how you handle a quotation and how you handle just a basic citation of a source. I also want to show you how to handle it if you have more than one. So we'll start out on page 4. So let's say that you have several sources that say essentially the same thing. This is how you're going to handle that. So I say, however, outside interests, whether administrators, businesses, or government representatives, frequently try to influence the curriculum. And then I have these three people who have said essentially the same thing, which is what I paraphrased above. The way you handle that is, at the end of the sentence, or right after you use the sources there, you put some parentheses, and then you list those different sources in alphabetical order by their last names, and you provide, a comma like I have here, and then also the date. Okay, so Busquet, comma, the date, semicolon, Gutman, comma, date, semicolon, Wilson, comma, date. And that shows your reader that you have several sources who are saying basically the same thing. It gives you the date, gives you the last names. It's actually pretty darn simple, and it's a good way to include more sources in your paper and show that the point that you're making is widely held in the field. Alright, next page. Blah, blah, blah. Nothing really very new in this next page, except that I do have a source that doesn't have a clear author. And so I had the title of the source. I got this from the web. Title of the source, and then the date that it was published. Okay, that's how you handle a source with no author. Or obviously it has an author, but no clear author. Next page, we'll go to our reference list. Alright, so every APA paper that includes outside sources is going to need to have a reference list. You'll notice that up at the top of the paper, it's all exactly the same as we've been doing it. Okay, so you have your title, the running head there, and then you have the page number. It's not like a new paper or anything like that. you have the word references, not the word bibliography, not the words works cited. This is an APA paper. It needs the word references, and that needs to be bold and centered at the top of the page. Then you have your sources that you've used in the paper, and they're alphabetized by the first word that you use. So you'll notice the very first source is that American academic that didn't have a clear author. I got it from the web. The way you handle web sources is, you have the date that they're published, and then you have these words, retrieved from, and then the web address. That tells your reader where to go if they want to find that source and read it for themselves. Here's another web source that I had. Okay, this one had a clear author though. So last name, comma, just the first letter of their first name with a period after it. Then we have the date of the source with another period. This is the title of this article, College Writing and Beyond 5 Years Later. This is a bit of a goofy one because that College Writing and Beyond was the title of a book that she wrote, and so it's italicized. Ordinarily you don't have those italics, and I'll show you some stuff a little bit later here and how that looks. Notice the capitalization that I have here. Okay, not everything is capitalized. The title of the journal that it comes from, if you have a professional journal, and the volume and issue. Periods everywhere. Retrieved from because I got it from the web, just like I showed you. Here's another web source that comes from an online newspaper. You'll notice a pattern here, right? Last name, comma, first initial, period, the date, period. Here's the title of his article. Note the capitalization there, right? There's not a lot of it. This is the newspaper, the Chronicle of Higher Education. Note the capitalization there and the italics. And then here's where I got it from. If you choose to get something from one of our wonderful library databases, from a professional journal, you're going to do something like this next source. Whoa, look at this. It's almost like we can figure out how it's going to be listed. Last name, first initial, blah, 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 blah. There's the title of the article. Here's the title of the journal, the volume, and then the pages that appeared within the journal. You get the idea. There are too many different types of sources for me to give you an example of all of them here. What I want to encourage you to do is to look it up. Part of being a good college student is understanding when you need to find some additional information and getting the process of looking things up and checking them rather than just winging it. You want to get it right. And so you go out there to your handbook, or you go online. The Purdue OWL, O-W-L, is a great resource. You go out, you find the information, and you make sure to do it right. Once again, this provides your reader with the information they need to understand your paper, to take you seriously, to look at you as a professional, and probably it's going to get you a better grade. Thanks for your time, and have a great day.